When is it befitting for a Latin-led nonprofit that predominantly does business in the Latin communities to have knowledge, let alone solve the issues of African American business owners? To date, Los Angeles-based Valley Economic Development Center, VEDC, a nonprofit small business lender also known as a certified CDFI, heavily rooted in the economic richness of the Latin communities it has served for well over 40 years, received $8 million of a $30 million commitment in grant funds from JPMorgan Chase Foundation to support a new lending program known as the National African American Small Business Loan Fund, launched October 2015. Set to boost economic opportunities for African Americans by providing financing for businesses across all industries with varying loan size amounts ranging from $35,000 to $250,000. Businesses receiving financing would be able to use the capital to expand, finance equipment, address short-term cash flow needs within New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles. With well over 268,000 African American-owned small businesses housed within these three cities, it should have been a no-brainer for the success of the program. If this fund was set up to help African American businesses, shouldn't an African American-led organization been chosen to lead this effort? Certainly, there was at least one African American-led or controlled CDFI willing to administer the financing for this program. According to a study conducted by Walker Associates and Consulting prior to the announcement of the administrator of the fund, 55 small business lending professionals, predominantly African Americans, convened for a strategy session in New York and Chicago, representing small business associations, national and local financial institutions, CDFIs, investment funds, Chamber of Commerce, and a handful of African American entrepreneurs focused on boosting economic opportunities for African Americans. Despite the fact that African Americans are the fastest growing segment of the nation's small business owners, since the announcement of the fund in 2015, to date, VEDC has lent $2.26 million of the $8 million grant to 24 African American-owned small businesses within the three cities. Tisto Chapman, former owner of Powerhouse Gym in Burbank, obtained a loan from VEDC, a loan he felt was predatory and ultimately left him closing his business and owing more than $400,000. When is it befitting for a Latin-led nonprofit that predominantly does business in the Latin communities to have knowledge, let alone solve the issues of African American business owners? The response would be, when is it befitting for an African American-led nonprofit that predominantly does business in the African American communities to have knowledge, let alone solve the issues of Latin business owners? Truth is absolute. Something either is or isn't. If indeed Walker & Associates consulting firm prior to the announcement of the fund identified 55 African American small business leaders and experts that convened in New York and Chicago to share strategy on how to boost opportunities for accessing capital for African American small business owners while being transcribed by VEDC leadership. If indeed JPMorgan Chase was aware of Walker Associates consulting findings prior to the fund announcement, if indeed there was no vetting and VEDC was hand-selected, granted $8 million with a $30 million goal and commitment with no metrics or impact reporting required. If indeed to date, $2.26 million was lent to 24 African American owned small businesses within Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York, when there was well than 268,000 viable African American owned small business opportunities to lend and reap the support of technical assistance. If indeed all publications from VEDC reflect the same faces of small business owners and the same content, just different dates. If indeed all this is true, well then, okay. Though there may be a seat at the table, remember, as an African American, you're not on the agenda. At the end of the day, nothing negates the fact that the funder chose a non-African American group to administer the fund. Once again, African Americans have come up with the short end of the stick. As it is, African Americans have yet to rebound from the economic downturn in 2008, nor escape the persistent, negative, stereotypical, and demeaning perceptions that daily dominate Black lives. When is enough enough? As people of color, it's beyond time that we are part of this solution task rather than the recipient task. In the future, don't play with others and claim you're playing with us. This is Katherine, the People's Peeps, keeping folks in the know. If you wish to comment or subscribe to this channel, please do so below. Until next time,